Did you hear what I was playing, Elaine?
No, sir. I do not think it's polite to listen, sir.
I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. I see you've got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell. Who can that be? So early.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock.
Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, well, I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come for pleasure. I call that business. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have eaten them all the time.
That is a very different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is quite devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you are married to her already. You are not married to her, and I don't think you ever will be.
What makes you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you shall have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? I don't know anyone with the name of Cecily.
This is a cigarette case you left the last time you dined here. Now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that things are yours after all. It is a present from someone of the name Cecily, and you just said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. For heaven's sake, bring back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call her own nephew her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always said it was Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever met. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest if you ever try to deny it to me, to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country, and the cigarette just was given to me in the country.
Yes, but why is your name Ernest in town and Jack in the country? I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I would explain to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who regards me as her uncle, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is that address in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited.
Yes, but why is your name Ernest in town and Jack in the country? Come on, boy. You'd much better have the thing out at once.
When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone. And, as a high moral tone is hardly conducive to either one's health or one's happiness, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth. Pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. But you are as a Bunbury's. You've invented a very useful younger brother of the name Earnest that you might come up to town whenever you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid of the name Bunbury, in order that I may go down to the country whenever I choose. If it weren't for poor Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight, for I have really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you're absurdly careless about sending invitations. Besides, now that I know you're a Bunburyist, I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Cecily is a little too much interested in him.
Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. If I can get you out of the way for 10 minutes, that you might have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
But it's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
I'm sorry for a bit late, Algernon, but I was obliged to come and dear Lady Harbury. Hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now, I'll have a cup of tea, one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Yes, Aunt Augusta. Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had sent promise to Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief. But I'm afraid I won't be able to dine with you tonight, Aunt Augusta, for I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is dreadfully ill again.
This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from personally bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind on whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me.
Yes, then we'll go over the program if you'll kindly come into the next room for a moment with me.
Thank you, Algernon. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk about the weather, I always feel certain that they mean something else.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've been minding more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Why, even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. And it has always been my ideal to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something about that name that inspires absolute confidence. Why, from the moment Algernon first mentioned to me he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
Oh, it is a divine name. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I can think of lots nicer names. Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack has a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the intrinsic pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing, but you have not proposed to me yet. And I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Oh, of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it?
Mr. Worthing? Right, sir, from this summer I become imposter. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. And when you do become engaged, I will inform you. And now, I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing, and while I'm making these inquiries, Gwendolyn, you will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma,
The carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage!
yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of edible young men. I have assumed this as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We bet to give, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I do smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father?
I'm afraid I really don't know. 'Twould be near to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I was found.
Found?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of very charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
But where did the charitable gentleman who has a first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag, a somewhat large, black leather handbag, with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the brighter line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you just told me. To be born, at any rate, bred, in a handbag without handles to it or not, seems to me to display contempt for ordinary decencies.
May I ask you then what you advise me to do?
I'm strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations.
I can produce the handbag at any moment. It isn't my dressing room at home.
Sir, you can hardly imagine that I would allow my only daughter to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algie!
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn has refused you?
Oh, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. My tough mother is perfectly unbearable.
Did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, before the end of the week, I shall get rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of the apoplexy.
Yes, but apoplexy is hereditary, my dear fellow. You'd much better say a severe chill.
Very well then. My poor brother Earnest is carried off quite suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But didn't you say Miss Cardew was a little too interested in your brother Ernest? Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Cecily's not a silly, romantic girl. She has a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays absolutely no attention at all to her lessons.
I would much rather like to meet Cecily.
I'll take very good care you never do.
Miss Fairfax. Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression of Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else and marry often, nothing she can do can alter my eternal devotion to you. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire. I will communicate with you daily. Algie, you may turn round now. You may also ring the bell.
You will let me use your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
I probably will not be back till Monday. You can pack all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
Cecily, come. It is time for intellectual pleasures. Your German grammar is on the table. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. And besides, I know perfectly well that I look quite plain during my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is, that you should improve yourself in every way.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious that he cannot be quite well.
You must remember his constant anxiety about his unfortunate brother Ernest.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow his unfortunate brother Ernest to come down here sometime. He might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character so irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. Put away your diary, Cecily. Memory, my dear child, is the diary we all carry about with us.
I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels we read.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel! I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned.
Oh, I see Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll in the park with you, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned any
not being inattentive in your studies. Were I fortunate enough to have Miss Prism as a pupil, I would hang upon her lips.
Dear doctor, I find I do have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure.
Cecily, you'll read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee, you may admit. It is somewhat too sensational.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German. Mr. Ernest Worthing was just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. Uncle Jack's brother! Pray ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. Yes, miss. I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he looks just like everybody else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
And you are Uncle Jack's brother, Cousin Ernest. My wicked Cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it. Though I am sure it must have been very pleasant, I don't think you should be so proud of that.
I'm not. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Being with you, I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
And that is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come into the dining room?
You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think it would catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
But is a man not equally as attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often I have been told not even to her.
Oh, but dear Dr. Chasuble, you do not seem to understand that Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing, I have returned sooner than I expected.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I do hope this garb of woe does not return with some terrible calamity.
My brother,
Still leading his life of pleasure.
dead!
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him! I trust he will profit by it.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
You were with him at the inn.
No, he died in Paris. A severe Jew.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to draughts. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic affliction in next Sunday's sermon. The text can be adapted to almost any occasion, from celebrations to christenings.
Christenings. The fact is, dear doctor, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon.
But surely you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
Oh, well, at what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am pleased to see you back! But what horrid clothes you have got on! What is the matter, Uncle Jack? You look happy. You look like you got a toothache. And I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother, Ernest.
What nonsense since I've got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. How about he may have behaved, he is still your brother. I'll tell him to come out.
These are very joyful tidings.
My brother is in the dining room. Good heavens!
Brother John, I've come down from town expressly to tell you that I am sorry for all the trouble I've caused, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing would induce me to take his hand.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everybody. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor infant friend, Mr. Bunbury.
Bunbury? I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else.
Uncle Jack, if you don't take hand with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never!
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
Isn't it pleasant to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
You have done a beautiful acting today, dear child.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, I need to get out of this place as soon as possible.
I put Miss Jen's things in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time, old boy.
Merriman, fetch the dog cart. Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lie you are, Jack. No one has called me.
Yes, it have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman called you back.
My duties as a gentleman have never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
And Cecily is darling.
You are not to talk to Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You're quite ridiculous. It's absurd to be dressed in mourning for someone who is clearly staying a whole week with you.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week.
Well, I'm certainly not going to leave you while you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, I suppose so. If you are not too long. I never saw someone take so long to dress and with such little result.
This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you. Goodbye!
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's going to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part?
But before we do, I hope that I shall not offend you if I state that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness is a great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. It is simply a very young record of her own personal thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I do hope you will order a copy, but pray, Ernest, do go on. I'm quite ready for more. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more.
Cecily, ever since I first gazed upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me if you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is ready, sir.
Oh, tell her to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir. Uncle Jack will be very much annoyed if he finds out you're staying on for next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone in the whole world but you, Cecily. Will you marry me?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, were from the chief public conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair grows naturally. Does it?
Yes, darling.
I am so glad. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone by the name of Ernest. It seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But do you mean to say you could not love me if my name were any other?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own sweet, loving little darling, there is nothing wrong with Algernon. It is rather an aristocratic name. But really, darling, do you mean to say you could not love me if my name were Algie?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I assume, thoroughly experienced in all the rites and passages of the church?
Oh yes, Dr. Tosville's a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must speak to him at once on a most important christening. I mean a most important business. I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it would be rather hard for you to leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter a proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthy on very important business in Miss Fairfax Estates.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthy went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack, and some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women interested in philanthropic work. I feel they're so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. I like you already. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then it is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any female relations. My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a ward.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother. Of course you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
I fear there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Well, it is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is of any disappointment to you, but I am afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it were to cause you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that in the time since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind. Shall I leave it to you as usual, miss? Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills one can see 5 counties.
I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew. I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Flowers would come in here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London. May I offer you some tea?
Yes. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake? Or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lots of sugar, and though I asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
Save my poor, innocent, trusting boy, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily, of course not.
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must have been some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arms at present around your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing. This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course I'm not engaged to Gwendolyn. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
Is your name really John?
It has been for years.
Oh.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
Oh, my poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn. There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is
Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time I've ever been placed in such a painful position, and I am quite inexperienced with dealing with anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all, and I have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is clear that neither of us are engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and the most wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I've had in all my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
That's absurd. One has a right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious bunburyist? Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something, and I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What should I be serious about? I haven't got the smallest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to go to the town quite so often as you used to do, the Algie. And not a bad thing either. Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
But I can't go. I haven't had my dinner yet. And only people like vegetarians and things like that go without their dinner. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened under the name of Earnest at 5:45.
My dear fellow, the sooner about that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It is absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence to suggest that I've ever been christened in all my life, and I think it is entirely probable I never was. Dr. Chasuble seems to think so too. After all, you have been christened already.
Yes, but I have not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
So I know my constitution can stand it, but can yours? If one is not certain, one should not be about it. You cannot have forgotten that someone very nearly closely connected with you was nearly carried off from Paris this week by a severe chill.
Well, you said yourself that a severe chill is not hereditary.
It used to be, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements and things like that.
Oh, that is nonsense. You are always talking nonsense. Auntie, I wish to goodness you would go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I can't go. I haven't quite finished my tea.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house as anyone else would have done seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame.
To help them drink the tea. That looks like repentance.
You don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
And then looking at us, what effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
When a most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing! I have something very particular to say to you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Montfrey, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
This certainly seems a satisfactory explanation. Does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But it does not take away from the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of great importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Now is not the time for genuine skepticism. The explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Monfort has said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
So we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake which one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them the task is not a pleasant one?
Could we not both speak at the same time?
Oh, an excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me? Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing?
To please me, you're ready to face this fearful ordeal?
We are.
Oh, darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell?
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean? Merely that I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma. Come here and sit down. Stop immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, a physical weakness in the old. Apprise, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid. I followed her at once by a luggage train. You will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease from this moment. Now as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it's in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh no, poor Bunbury's dead. The doctors decided Bunbury could not live, and so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I'm glad, however, that he made up his mind at last to some definite course of action. Now may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
Cecily and I are engaged to be married, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Montfort and I are engaged to be married, Aunt Augusta.
I don't know if there's anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part ought to have place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London?
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square.
That is not unsatisfactory.
I have also in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, confirmation, vaccination, and the measles, both the German and the English varieties.
Ah, well, I've crammed with incident. Has Miss Cardew any little fortune?
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds.
Miss Cardew seems to me most attractive beyond belief now that I look at her. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems about as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. Would I suppose I give my consent?
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon for interrupting, but I'm afraid this engagement is entirely out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent.
On what grounds do you object?
Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir. Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these men have expressed desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, their ideas grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he heard that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to us, Dr. Chaucerful.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Wood. I shall return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pure-opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention Miss Prism?
Why, yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may be one of quite importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She's the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, Dick Cannon. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism, come here. Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a preambulator containing a baby of the male sex. But you never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the preambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not in there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, I had prepared as usual to take the baby out in its preambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I never can forgive myself, I had deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained the infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line!
I must retire to your room for a moment. Gwendolyn, you will wait here for me.
If you're not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this all means, Lady Bradford?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Tarscombe. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian is of a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he's having an argument. I despise arguments. They are always vulgar and often convincing. I wish you could arrive at some conclusion. This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes! Here is the injury received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Oh, and here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. Oh, and here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had placed it there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you in this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, mother.
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not know, this is a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot an act of repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is a lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give to you not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's not a brother. Then I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother.
We met.
Algy, you will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Well, I did do my best, although I admit I was out of practice.
My own one. But what are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten the point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change, except in my affections.
No conviction you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared at once. Auntie Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, was lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the genuine Christian name was, but I've no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years.
Algie, don't you recollect what my father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we're not even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life, but I've no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list allows 40 years are here. Yes, these delightful records should run my constant study. Generals M. Malum, Maxbourne, Magley, Marcarelli, Meisenheimer. What ghastly names they have! Moncrief, Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General 1869, Christian names, Earnest John. Gwendolyn, I always told you my name was Ernest. Well, it is Ernest after all. I mean, naturally it is Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking that name.
My own Ernest! I thought from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to suddenly find out that all his life is speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia?
Frederick, at last!
Cecily at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of trivialities.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.